let's see what decks then Helloleeroy, or what classes Helloleeroy and Danswf are bringing. Now, I'm excited for this one. Because these two have been such a clash of personalities for a while now, for a couple of seasons. Like, there's a lot of banter that goes on between these two. So this game will have implications to how both react on social media, I think.
I think that's fair to say, and not only in social media. I think we now have confirmation that Helloleeroy will actually be having a working webcam. All it took was him to
turn it on,
hit his head, and then he realized, oh yeah, Bing, just got to turn it on.
I am excited, though, because every week that I was on previously, I was always talk up about how exciting it is to watch Helloleeroy when he's on webcam.
You're finally going to get
it. He's a little bit banterous and he's very very emotive.
Yeah.
We might actually get it today.
It's true. Just in time for the new David Attenborough series to come back. We see Helloleeroy in his natural habitat.
Oh my god, I would pay good money for David Attenborough to commentate on Helloleeroy's life. There he is! And he's sporting a Disney hat as well. Not sure that's quite Halloween, but I don't know if this is either. So
I mean, it was pretty scary, whatever was going on
whatever
there.
happened, I was
shocked
terrified.
to my bone.
Yeah, I was terrified. But any favourites for you out of these two players, Darok?
So these are two players that I think, you know, like you're saying, Helloleeroy is a player who's especially good at reading his opponent and adapting to that is his main strength within the ESL Premiership. And that's becoming more and more relevant as time goes on, because we're seeing Kazakus Priest and Jade Druid being bought less and less. We're seeing more Big Priest, Big Druid, Aggro Druid, Dragon Priest, all that kind of stuff that's really making it much, much more difficult if you're just going with the same stuff over and over again. You need to be able to adapt, which is what I think Helloleeroy's biggest strength will be going forward.
100%. I've always said he's one of these players that can just read an opponent before the game starts and base his decks around that. I mean, take us back to his game against Duncan, I think a couple of weeks ago, where he put in the Eater of Secrets because he predicted Duncan to bring that Control Mage. But here we have it. Let's be having you then. I can't believe I just said that live on the cast. Helloleeroy versus Dan. And we are going to have... Well, looks like this is going to be an interesting one. A lot of aggression already seen in the mulligan.
Yeah, so for Helloleeroy, the main question needs to be asking myself here is, am I going to be ahead on turn 3? And with Swashbuckler and Backstab, two fantastic early game cards to gain board control, he thinks he is. And the majority of the time, I think that would be a safe assumption. But given the really powerful hand from Dan against him, I'm not sure that's going to be the case.
You know, what I'd love to see is these players being able to see each other's webcams. Because the thing is, we get to live finals, right, and suddenly all of this emotion, it just drained away.
Disappears.
Because poker face,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
You don't want to show off what you've got in your hand. But we are going to have a battle of who can impress the most on webcam if Dan actually frames himself and we don't just see his hairline. But, you know, it's a good hairline.
Yeah, poker face at the finals. I wouldn't be surprised to see Helloleeroy poke his face on the webcam here, just because you literally just have no idea what's going to happen. That would be very high up the list of things I would expect to see, given what we've seen before.
So, a very interesting... what is happening with Dan here? I think he just got told.
He's in the Upside Down. We need to go on an adventure, Bob, and save him.
We need to save him. I'm not going into the Upside Down 11.
Yeah, it doesn't end well, mate. I hate to break it to you.
Hashtag justice for Bob. So early on, Helloleeroy hasn't been able to do too much except just get his patches on board. He really would have loved to get this fledgling out, but of course he's just going to have to wait. Does have a Void Terror that he's been able to pick up. That might come in handy a little bit later just to get a big minion on the board, but not the best minion or card to pull from the Warlock side, that's for sure.
I really like this from Dan as well. He could have taken a much greedier line and gone with the Councilman first and try and get the double buff on the attack by going for Captain summoning patches on the following turn. But no, you know, then you're leaving yourself open to Cold Blood coming down on the patches to kill off your Darkshire Councilman. Just keep the board clear, keep yourself ahead, and you probably will end up winning. It's just all about winning the early game scrimmages for board.
Backstab, plus use your dagger, kill off Celsi Captain, then play Fledgling? I think that's the play.
Yeah, he just needs to pray there's no way to deal 2 damage, which is a pretty good assumption, to be honest. There's not stuff like, I don't know, Direwolf, Knife Juggler a lot of the time in these decks. It's basically just Soulfire in this instance. But double Malcazar's Imp into Soulfire is pretty much the perfect answer.
Doesn't even need to play both, though. He actually prefers just to get a little bit more power on the board, wants to get the Flame Imp just so he can deal some damage. and throw away the other Malkaiser's Imp, which actually was the best option there by leaving it.
I don't know, drawing 2 cards, you're not getting a 3-2 on the board, you're having a 1-3 instead. But going into turn 4, that's a notoriously the weakest turn for Rogue. I mean, Naga Corsair coming in here for Leeroy, but that is far from unanimously run.
But actually, that's really important for Leeroy as well, him being able to take out that power. The power that Dan opted for, he decided he wanted that on the board rather than the card draw, and now he's been punished for it by that Naga Corsair coming off the top.
I mean, we got to be careful with the words "punish" because that indicates it was a wrong play. But I think arguably it was there. I would have preferred going with the Malkazar's Imp, maybe something like, like we see there, the Naga Corsair comes down and you want to have more stats on the board. But the fact that it could have been killed off because it has 2 health means it was a big punish.
Here's a question for you: does every pumpkin pop on this map? And by map, I mean board.
I was really hoping you weren't just going to ask me, does every pumpkin pop? Because I would just have literally no clue how to answer that question without being sent to the nearest police station.
Well, that's
I don't know. I don't really interact with the board. I'm a bit boring in my Hearthstone play.
You're not a board interactor?
Nah.
That surprises me, to be honest. I took you for more.
No, I'm like a, TV show on the side kind of Hearthstone player. Just everything else going on around the outside just kind of phase out.
A little bit of Netflix and chill.
Yeah, with
Netflix and Hearthstone.
Me, myself, and I.
I like that.
It sounded better in my head.
It's all right. It sounded okay.
Thanks.
The Scalebane, I think, was the obvious play, just looking at Helloleeroy's hand. There, of course, was options of Swashbuckler, seeing what you get maybe into a Van Cleef, but I think it was a little bit risque. But now, Dan can clear up quite comfortably thanks to that Dreadlord. By clear up, I just mean clear up the big, juicy minion that's on the board. The Scalebane will survive.
That's the main thing here. Again, you're staying ahead on the board. You've still got some really nice top decks like Doomguard, Bone Mare, maybe Ken if that's in the deck, although it's less unanimous in Zoo. And you just need to pray that your opponent doesn't have power cards for the next few turns, because if it's something like Cairn into Bone Mare, maybe that's a little bit too difficult for the Warlock to deal with. But the main thing is here, for the Warlock, if you can't just win through early game board control, Dan is just going to be trying to keep even at the very least on board and then tap his way into Blood Reaver Gul'dan, because once that comes down, it is so difficult for the Rogue to win. Yeah,
nigh impossible in some situations. Dread Infernal from the Swashbuckler. I mean, that's a big minion which may help Helloleeroy. Might also help with a little bit of extra damage, of course, when it does come onto the board. But what Helloleeroy needs now is to just have something survive so he can put the Bone Mare onto something that's on the board.
I mean, this isn't bad for Leeroy. He's got to trade in the Scalebane here if he wants to kill off the Dreadlord, which I think is probably the right play. Okay, he's going with the value trade, afraid of Doomguard, I guess, because of the draw it could get. And, well, fair play, man. I guess it worked out for him. It probably was actually the right play now that I look at it. The 4-1 does die here, no matter what. I don't know, that was such a tough play.
It was, and Helloleeroy is one of these players that does make those decisions based on what he would deem stats, or at least what he has played against, what he's familiar with, what he thinks most likely is going to pop up, which most of the top players do. That's how they play, right? You play against what you may expect, what's the worst possible outcome of their draw.
Sure.
But now Dan has put himself in a situation where he's got rid of his hand. He now has Mortal Coil followed by Doomguard, so he might be able to get away with not tossing too much away here.
And there we see Leeroy's pet card there in the Bittertide Hydra. He runs this card in absolutely everything. Tempo Mage, Hunter, I mean everyone plays it in that, but probably like Murloc, Paladin, Tempo Rogue, probably Zoo. Any vaguely aggressive deck, he's jamming it.
I think it was last season of Hearthstone Premiership. Unfortunately, Helloleeroy exited early. Or earlier than he should have been, where there was a point where he made a Tempo Warrior deck that had Bittertide Hydras, and he was claiming it was meta-defining, it was the best thing on ladder, and he would absolutely wipe the floor with the competition, and then it didn't really go anywhere. But
yeah,
he is a Hydra boy.
He is a Hydra boy to his core. It kind of seems interesting to put it in a deck with Whirlwind effects being the defining characteristic of the deck, but I mean, hey, it's a cool idea.
I mean, hello, Leeroy.
I don't know what that meant.
No, neither do I. But thankfully, the Voidwalker was drawn for Dan, which means that he can actually use the Doomguard and the Mortal Coil here if he wants. You could just use Mortal Coil to deal 1 damage first. I mean, why not?
Why not?
I guess.
Actually, it's pretty good. You can kill off, you can just chuck it down on the Bone Mare, and then you'll be able to kill it off with the Despicable Dreadlord afterwards.
Yeah.
I'm not missing anything. There's literally no reason not to.
There's no reason not to. You don't draw a card by...
And I think he's figured it out,
He's got there.
Good lad.
I mean, we can almost see his brain on his webcam, so we have a very intimate view of Dan at the moment.
And his inner workings.
His inner workings, yeah. But in the scale of who's winning the emote game, Dan has definitely been more emotive than Helloleeroy. Helloleeroy's been quite laid back. Yeah. Maybe, did you say he's banged his head recently?
Yeah. Oh. He's been lobotomized. That's why he's got the hat on, because his brain's showing on the top.
It is Halloween.
It is Halloween. Yeah.
Poor guy.
And this is just really, Hydra is not the card you want here. You're too far behind on health total, and Bittertide Hydra does a good job of capitalizing on a board lead. It can wrestle back board control, but when you're behind on board and this far behind on health, playing it just basically leads to a death sentence. I mean, I guess he can eat it up with the Void Terror is what he's mainly praying for here, but with the 1-3 taunt chump blocking this 11-11, and that just delivering 1 off lethal.
1 off lethal, and a round of applause to the fans of Dan as well.
He likes to clap.
He does, and it means this Dread Infernal cannot be used either, and there is no way in Halloween I can see Helloleeroy getting back into this.
Hydra off the... I mean, this
nope.
Nope, nothing.
No,
yeah,
stop thinking.
Rattling through my...
You can try.
All right, I can do that, mate.
You can... What? You can stop thinking?
Not thinking. I'm good at that. Yeah.
That's actually really hard to do. When you go to sleep, you need to not think. But it's really difficult.
My girlfriend's really bad at that. I'm depressingly good at that. Like, just turning off. Just into bed, poof, nothing going on up here.
I have so many comments that I want to make, but
thank you.
I'm not going to, as Helloleeroy does the honourable thing and kills himself, as Dan will take a 1-0 lead with a few neck cracks as well. I'm loving this. I'm getting into it now. I've been waiting for the Helloleeroy webcam, but I should have been waiting for the Dan SWF webcam.
All in on Dan now.
And we're zoomed in as well.
That's
we're right
true.
there.
Right in
it's
on
like
the
I'm in his bedroom.
Yeah.
Again.
I think moving swiftly on, what that came down to for Leroy was unfortunately the keep of the Vicious Fledgling. You know, he kept it, which I think was not a bad idea at all, because if your opponent had not a fantastic start, didn't have the Soulfire, they might not have been able to deal with it because you had Swashbuckler and Backstab to secure early board. But playing a 3-3 for 3 on turn 3 is just not enough to win the game, not by a long shot.
3 is the magic number, Daruk, but sometimes...
Halloween, you want 6-6 for 6. That's why the Dread Infernal's there.
Or 13.
Oh, yeah.
Or 11.
Or 11. That's why I made 11-11.
There we go. So we have Priest, Warlock, and Rogue still left for Hello. We didn't actually discuss the bans before the game because we were busy being silly willies. So Rogue and Paladin banned away from both. Quick thoughts before the game starts?
Well, it's the same strategy for Helloleeroy as it was for Coltans in the previous series, bringing the Zoo Warlock and banning away the Rogue. But because his own Paladin was banned away, slightly less effective, the fact that he banned away the Rogue.
Dan's a cheeky chappy, isn't he?
Cheeky chappy?
Yeah, look at him. He's just a cheeky chappy.
I mean, he's literally just sitting there.
Oh, he's smiling. He's got his neck. He's got round of applause and everything. This is entertainment. Get me some popcorn. Seriously, I would love some popcorn.
Yeah, can we sort that out, please?
Yeah, I'll radio it in. You cast.
Okay. He's actually doing it. But here for the Jade Druid, I think Dan can be pretty happy in this scenario, given that he's got pretty close to the nuts, whereas his opponent has got pretty close to whatever not that is.
And I really don't know what that is. I don't want to think about what that is, to be honest.
You like that single entendre?
I did. I did. But Helloleeroy is now going to be playing... Well, this is nice, actually. Getting out a decent amount of damage. The Galactic Crawler could have come into effect, of course, if there was any sort of patches ongoing, any sort of Corsair coming out from Helloleeroy, but the Galactic Crawler is just going to sit there for now.
Yeah, for now. I've seen a few lists that omit all the cheaper pirates and just go for Captain and Patches, which would be fantastic for Dan if that is the case, because obviously munching up a Captain is the best possible outcome against a Zoo. But for the moment, because Leroy is not taking the value trade there and thus shoring himself up against Swipe a little bit, it's not looking insane for Dan. But given that he can just keep on ramping up, get himself closer to that inevitability that he now has in Ultimate Infestation, and he has the Spreading Plague to see him along the way, it's not looking bad at all.
Yeah, the fact you can ramp up now with Maya Keeper, you can follow up the Spreading Plague if the board does get big from Helloleeroy. It's not too bad of a situation for Dan.
Yeah.
This deck seems relatively similar from Helloleeroy. I mean, we saw, well, it was today actually, that in the Trinity series, we saw someone go 6-0 with Warlock, and it was a relatively similar list to Helloleeroy's. Of course, they submit their decks last night, so there's no way Helloleeroy could have seen that today. But clearly people are feeling like Warlock is getting a bit better in this meta.
Better in the meta.
Boom.
I think that's right. You ban the Rogue, and then you just play a deck, because when Backstab is not a card you need to worry about, cards like Vicious Fledgling, Flame Imp, all that kind of stuff become pretty absurd, actually.
Luckily for Dan, he did have the means to deal with the Fledgling, because the Fledgling does get pretty scary, of course. It's not as scary as it used to be, thanks to Innovate disappearing. It was, yeah. We won't. Actually, I don't even want to mention that. I'm glad that doesn't happen anymore.
What, turn 1 Fledgling?
Yeah, I mean, it still can happen, but it's just less likely, isn't it?
I mean, in Hearthstone, anything can happen.
You deserve that one.
Yes.
You've earned it. And that's also a star on your chart as well at home, all right?
Thanks, Dad.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Thanks, Mum.
Yeah. Thanks. Glad you corrected yourself, otherwise the belt would have come off. So this has been really good for Helloleeroy, actually. The fact he's been able to just toss away those cards and draw because of the Imp. And he's put himself in a really good position, a good spot that it's looking pretty dire for Dan now. He may be forced to just ramp up and use this infestation.
Oh,
which is what he's going to do.
I mean, okay, you say the phrase, he may be forced to do that. He's going for an Ultimate Infestation on turn 6. That's it's a pretty good scenario in which to find oneself.
Within an Ultimate Infestation. That's, yeah.
Within that. Like, if you were that ghoul in the middle, breaking out of that tree or wherever they are, I think you'd be over the moon.
Would you? You'd just be on Earth. It's under the moon, really.
Yeah, I guess so. But, like, to them, like, they don't look like gross ghouls to each other. They just look like people to each other.
True. Yeah, this is true. But this Ultimate Infestation, how much is it going to help? Well, that helps.
That does help.
Yeah, that helps, because it means you can get rid of the 8-5 and there's only 8 damage left on board. You've got a 5-5 to work with as well as more armor. The Bone Mare is going to help Helloleeroy continue this barrage of damage, but...
Oh, I don't know if it's going to get the job done now. Spreading Plague, Mark of the Lotus, or even just Swipe to clear off some of the stuff here. There is 17 health left for the Druid, and there is 12 damage swinging through on this turn if the Bone Mare comes down, but then there's still the 5-5 left on the board, and as we were saying, the Ultimate Infestation not only gives a powerful play on the turn it's played, it makes the next turn insanely good.
If the Scalebane had hit the Imp instead, this may have been a very different situation.
Very true, yep. That would have been an extra 3 damage on the board, so down to 2 here instead.
So now, can Dan clear everything off here? He can use Mark of the Lotus to make a 6-6 if he wants, but it looks like Malfurion to gain a little bit more armor.
It's interesting he's not going for the swipe, because he could attack in with the 5-5, go Spreading Plague, and then swipe the Scalebane, I guess. To be honest, seems like a slightly better play for me. Oh, actually, no, I guess because you can go for the Mark of the Lotus to buff up. I guess the main thing I was thinking with this play is just if you... leave the 10 attack minion on 1 health, that's a pretty rough situation to find yourself in. But yeah, this is perfectly good as well.
Yeah, now Helloleeroy needs an immediate answer, but I feel like he's slowly falling behind. But a Doomguard is a pretty... Oh, it's a pretty good one. There's a pretty good card to top deck.
Yeah, we take those.
We do take those, but annoyingly, all your minions only do 5 damage.
Damn it.
But you do get patches.
Definitely.
So it means you can deal with both.
Yeah, you're going to be killing off everything here basically, and then just praying your opponent doesn't have any way of repopulating the board with taunts for 6 mana.
I've never seen it happen, to be honest. I've seen it happen for 5 mana. Oh no, wait, now it happens for 6 as well. You were talking about Spreading Plague, weren't you?
I was.
You cheeky dog.
You're a clever boy. Now you get a star.
Thank you. Son, daughter. What are you?
Oh,
just a creation. You don't even have parents. You were made in a lab.
You're turning into the bad one.
Sorry.
You're meant to be... Actually, did Barb and 11 ever interact?
just as a reference for stream, we're only going to discuss Season 1 things because... Season 1 Stranger Things because, of course, we don't want to spoil things from Season 2.
Yeah, because some of us might not have seen it
Some
yet.
people might not have seen it.
Yeah.
And by some, I mean Darren.
Sorry, guys.
I may have watched everything within the day.
I may have just watched everything. I'm going to be honest. My life's in a bit of a shambles right now.
So Dan is putting a brick wall down, and he is answering everything that Leroy puts onto the board, but Leroy keeps finding this power.
And with Swipe gone, Spreading Plague number 1 gone, there is still Spreading Plague number 2 to come back up and try and pull this back. But even Ultimate Infestation hit burning a card, like this is fine as well. You're left with 18 health on the left. There's 11 damage on the board. It would have to be 7 damage to kill your opponent. So it'd have to be like, I don't know, Leroy Soulfire, Bone Mare Soulfire, something ridiculous like that in order to be able to close out the game.
There should be Soulfires left in Helloleeroy's deck. But he's going to continue trying to push as much damage as possible, but...
And this is the worst situation for Helloleeroy because he is slipping behind, so he has to assume that Dan doesn't have the cards like Spreading Plague. But because Dan has a full hand of 10 cards, he kind of probably does have anything he could want.
I mean, yeah, that's the thing. He's used 2 Ultimate Infestations. He's drawn through the majority of his deck by this point. And Helloleeroy already knows, that's why he's having a little chuckle to himself that Spreading Plague has just been sat there, the furthest card to the left for Dan.
And this is a pretty fantastic turn for Dan. You can make a bunch of taunts, you can eat up the captain, you can even hero power up for a little bit of extra armor to put you out of range. Well, I guess he doesn't even feel it's necessary, although he is leaving himself vulnerable to Soulfire. I guess we must have just misremembered and both have already come down.
Yeah, no, Helloleeroy looks equally as excited.
Oh
and
my god, he gets it off the top!
Maybe an awkward decision from Dan, as somehow Helloleeroy is going to win this game. I feel like there were ways that you could have not done that from Dan.
The perfect emote. The spiciest of vintage
and
emotes.
Now we're seeing the Helloleeroy that I have promised for weeks. 1-1 series on. This could have been a very disappointing series, if I'm honest, if Dan had gone 2-0 up there and could have seen like a 3-0 sweep. Helloleeroy would have just been miserable. He probably would have left the room with the camera still on because he's done that before as well.
Done that before.
But now we really have a series on our hands.
We do. Now Leroy's the big road man, you know, coming in with the, all right, let's do this, making his face out of a frame.
The neck cracks and the finger wags and all the stuff
like
that the cool
youths
kids
of today do.
Yeah, they're all young and hip nowadays, unlike me.
Yeah.
I'm Bob. So Priest and Rogue left for Helloleeroy. Druid and Mage left. I see where your eyeline keeps going, young man.
I'm not doing anything, mate. I was just laughing at you saying Bob's famous catchphrase. What? I'm Bob.
I'm Bob. Justice for Bob. So here we go then. We are going to jump into game number 3 here as it starts to get a little bit toasty. Not just in the game, but in the studio as well. Helloleeroy is going to be playing Dragon Priest against the Jade Druid once again from Dan.
So this is a question I asked to Mitsuhide today on Twitter. How do you mulligan against Jade Druid? Because I was playing Dragon Priest and I felt like my mulligan, my win rate wasn't where it was supposed to be, and that was probably lying in the mulligan. And he was saying, you just want your early cards like Northshire and your Radiant Elementals and ways to buff those up with Divine Spirit, Inner Fire. You don't want to be going for the Dragon package at the start, because although things like Scalebane and Operative give you a powerful mid-game, if you can make something like an 8-8, a 10-10, a 12-12 around the same time, Druid just cannot deal with that.
Early game needed then for Helloleeroy, and that's why he's going to toss everything away.
I can agree with that.
I mean, you have options to search for more spells, and the Shadowword Pain can, of course, deal with anything early from Dan, but that's not the best.
It's not the best. Radiant Elemental, however, all of a sudden would make this hand from pretty poor to ridiculous. You can go for, on turn 3 or 4, Radiant Elemental, Power Word Shield, you know, a couple of Shadow Visions to find Divine Spirit and Inner Fire, buff your card up to insane levels, and there it is, the exact card he was looking for. And he can go for it right now because there's no way to kill it off for the Druid.
Followed up by a Northshire Cleric as well, which will allow him to play it, damage the Radiant Elemental and heal it as well. Get more card draw, get in my son. That's going to be That's just an expression, isn't it? Like, that's what they say.
I think you definitely need a comma after the in, though, or it's definitely not an expression.
No. But Helloleeroy will be very happy with this. And now we can actually trade into the 2-2 as well.
Wow.
Oh, there's a Talon Priest there. All right, what do you value more here, Mr. Darrock Brown? Do you fancy North Sea Cleric heal up, or do you fancy just making this Radiant Elemental pretty large?
So you are vulnerable to swipe all of a sudden if you just go with the attacking and heal. And I think because of that, you go for the Talon Priest. This goes up to an 8 health minion. On the following turn, because you're so likely to find the exact spell you want with Shadow Visions in this deck, there's such a good chance that Helloleeroy will see Divine Spirit and Inner Fire, and he will be able to make, if the attack doesn't come in, 16-16. There's an extremely high chance of that happening here, I would say.
Yeah, and I think you might go for it. Oh, there's one more.
Oh my
the Divine
god.
Spirit's already there now, so you could even find...
You can win the game
You can
right
find
now.
a Power Word Shield.
Divine Spirit, if Inner Fire is picked up, this is lethal.
Well...
I think, isn't it?
I don't know, we'll just find out.
Oh no, because you can't get in the heal as well.
So, yeah, there's plenty
24.
of options there.
Okay. It's almost lethal. I mean,
you just do it, right?
You just do it. Like, what are you even talking about? I mean, maybe you make a 16-16 instead, but I think you just go for the 24-24. Malfurion the Pestilent can come down, but I don't know. I just don't see how you lose there. You haven't got a really wide board, so Spreading Plague isn't that good against you. Maybe you could go for Northshire Coin heal and then go for the Inner Fire anyway. But I think because there's actually a pretty decent board given the turn that it is for the Jade Druid, you want to make it as big as possible so there's no way it can be killed off.
Yeah, you can make a 24-24 here. Helloleeroy was just double-checking that there wasn't a lethal opportunity. He did have a coin as well, right? So he was just making sure that that wasn't a thing. But yeah, you say, how on earth do you answer this as the Druid? And I'm going to pose that question to you as well, Darrock. How on earth do you answer it? Swipe's not going to do it. Jade Behemoth potentially could put a wall in the way.
Taunts are the way to start. You delay the problem. It's like the smelly plate in my room. I don't think about smelly plate. I don't look at smelly plate.
Just smell
it stays in its corner, and I stay in mine, and everyone's very happy.
How does your girlfriend feel about smelly plate?
She doesn't know until now.
Oh, okay. She's always been asking what the smell is, and you've been like, nothing.
It's you. You stink. Go in the shower.
Every single week.
Every time. She's got terrible self-esteem.
No way to deal with both of these taunts just yet for Helloleeroy. He's keeping this Shadow Word Pain as a little bit of a surprise here for the next turn, as if to say, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, I'm going to go 2-1 up in the series if no other taunts come down.
And Shadow Word Pain is actually a card I really like including from Helloleeroy, because after playing the standard Mitsuhide version for a little while that runs no pains and 1 Shadow Word Potion of Madness, I found it to be a very underwhelming card. Because you're so weak to Doomsayers in particular, I think the Shadow Word Pain makes a lot more sense in this deck. And now with Dragonfire Shadow Word Pain,
yep,
that's lethal.
You know what they say, no pain, no gain. But Helloleeroy is going to get plenty of gains here, going 2-1 up in this series. And he's just going to hold out for a little bit as well. He's going to pour
himself a drink.
As if he has... Oh, as if he can just pour a drink right here, right now. The thing is that both of these players know that the other one is going to watch this back as well. They're both players that like to review their games, right? They like to go back, they like to see what people say about them. But Helloleeroy takes his time with that lethal, as he literally is rubbing salt in the wounds there. And by literally, I mean figuratively. But, you know, we say these things sometimes.
And, I mean, earlier on in Ball Control's stream, Helloleeroy was saying that Should I carry on? Or
yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
That's okay.
So Helloleeroy was actually saying that if he... Not tit for tat?
Right, you have telekinesis.
Tat
You
for
can touch
tit?
me in different ways if you really want. Can you actually You are immature, you know?
It worked. I'm only 11, aren't I?
By the way, now I'm small.
Well, that wasn't really any change.
Well, game number 4 then. And potentially the last game, if Helloleeroy can take this one, it's going to be moving over to his Druid. No, he's not. He's going to be moving over to his
Rogu.
Pirate, his Rogue. His Pirate Rogue, his Rogue that has pirates in. And it's going to be Dan that is still trying to get a win with this Druid.
Pretty good looking hand actually as well for the Rogue to get things going. You can throw down a Flame Elemental Cold Blood on turn 2 and just say to your opponent, if you don't have a Wrath right now, you're actually looking to be in pretty bad shape. I suppose double hero power could get the job done, but Jade Blossom pretty much is going to be played on the following turn. So really powerful, aggressive options to get things going for Leroy at the start. And the follow-up of, wow, Naga Corsair and Scalebane now is such a powerful 1-2 punch from Leroy to just get ahead in this game before the ultimate infestation can come down.
Clearly a tough decision here for Helloleeroy as well. I mean,
so Cold Blood is unlikely to connect more than once anyway on any minion you put it down, so it doesn't make too much difference whether you go for it now or Leroy to close out the game. And the thing is, now it's got the highest chance of disrupting. The Druid's mana is all used up on ramping in the early turns, which is obviously insanely powerful, but it means they can't do anything else, and that is the Druid's biggest weakness. They are vulnerable to stuff like this. He sees that it's dead now, but Leroy doesn't know. He just denied a Jade Blossom. That's such a powerful turn to him.
Yeah, really powerful. Also deals effectively 9 damage. And now he can just hero power, he can play his deckhand as well. Follow up next turn with the Naga Corsair.
So he'd be vulnerable to swipe if he did go for that line of play. And because he's seen no ramp cards so far, maybe he assumes there's a higher chance of there being a swipe to come down. So he doesn't want to go for the South Sea deckhand right now. I guess actually because it leaves you more vulnerable to Spreading Plague as well later on down the line if the swipe isn't there. Probably best to save back the South Sea deckhand because you've got a hand at the moment, given how insanely stacked this hand is, that wants to have as few minions on the board as possible that aren't power drops, because then you're way more vulnerable to Spreading Plague.
I don't like being vulnerable to Spreading Plague.
Me neither.
And neither will Helloleeroy, but now he can just... I mean, I guess what he's debating is, do I coin out the Scalebane in any situation here? Do I even coin out the Hydra in any situation here? I've got the hiccups as well, Danswf.
I think I like going for the Scalebane right now as I ignore your ailment. Because now you have a minion on board, and if you're, you know, you want to be going for the Scalebane while there is definitely something on board. Next turn, maybe everything's cleared up, so you want to go for the Hydra when it's on its own instead.
So Dan can deal with, of course, the 4-2, but this is going to be another situation, I feel, where Dan is going to be on the back foot and he's just going to be trying to defend as best as he can with the ultimate infestations, the Spreading Plagues. And there is going to be a lot of possible damage for Helloleeroy coming in over these next few turns.
I mean, so you can go up to 19 health here and kill off the Scalebane, which is obviously very important. But then you're left with an 11 attack minion on the board, which, you know, there's so much damage coming through, even with just Deckhand Corsair on the following turn. If you didn't want to develop minions, or they were more likely to see Deckhand Hydra or Cairn coming down on the next turn. I just don't know if Spreading Plague on its own is going to be pulling this back. Maybe with all the cards you get after you go for Ultimate Infestation, something like Plague, Jade Idol, double Mark of the Lotus, something like that could be enough to fight back against this for Helloleeroy. But Dan is going to have to get some pretty impactful cards off of the UI.
And it does happen quite regularly for the Jade Druid as well.
Game.
Yeah, but I mean, he still lost.
Fair.
This is the thing, like this Jade Druid...
He could have won though.
Yeah.
It was close.
I think we'll discuss that again after this series finishes, because we didn't really get a chance to touch on it properly, but he has to use this Ultimate Infestation just to deal with the 5-5. But as you quite rightly said, a lot of damage now possible for Helloleeroy. Is there any possible lethal draws for him here? I'm trying to think.
Leroy for Leroy?
Another deckhand, another Leroy potentially could help.
Ooh, wow, okay.
It certainly gives you damage.
Patches, so you're getting a 3-2 and a 2-2. He's clearly done the maths. It wasn't quite lethal. 2 damage off, I believe it would have been, with the attacking with the weapon as well. But yeah, I think you save that. You just want to develop on the board now. I even like going for this over Cairn, because Hydra kills off a Scarab, whereas Cairn does not.
So now for Dan, Spreading Plague delays, along with swipes. Is there any world where these Spreading Plagues can potentially win him the game just by the sheer amount of damage that they're going to deal to the face of Helloleeroy?
Through the Hydras.
Through the Hydras.
I mean, stored up here in this hydratic potential energy, as I like to call it, hydraulic energy.
I like it.
Yeah, I'm trying to make it sound like gravitational potential. Do you remember that from physics?
No, I wasn't very good at science.
Fair enough. These are damage batteries is basically what I'm trying to get across.
Okay.
You know, it's stored up damage in here. There's, what, 48 damage stored up potentially in these Hydras. Obviously, that's not going to happen. You know, it's worth considering that there could be ways to fight back against the board, and I think that's what's making Dan's turns so difficult.
Is there a world where you spreading Plague and then you maybe use the swipe to face at some point? It looks like no is the option he's gone for in the end.
Yeah, you're going to
go for the safer option. Just trying to win back this board.
But already that's actually a pretty good amount of damage that's been pushed through.
And with Naga Corsair, oh well, Vastspine Slayer, there we go, and I think that'll be another drink board.
Again.
No, you know what he's doing? I think he's going to bring back the trusty whiteboard. Yes, he is. Easy, Helloleeroy says. I remember the whiteboard fondly from previous seasons of Hearthstone Premiership. Here and now. This is going to be game, set, and match for Helloleeroy, who will be going 2-1 in the Hearthstone Premiership, whereas Dan is going to be dropping to 1-2. And clear dismay for Dan as he... It seems like there's quite a small room as he just went wall to wall and it only seemed like he took 2 steps there. But regardless, Helloleeroy is the victor.
Why do I sleep in a shower?
What's happening?
Someone let me out.
I'm in my cupboard again. But let's talk about... I think it's important that we talk about this.